framing of characters within larger narratives matters, especially when one sets up a protagonist and antagonist. In my previous video, Sympathy for the Devil, Why the Left Identify with Horror Villains, I went over many case studies of left-wingers, breadtubers in particular, having an odd tendency to, well, identify with obviously evil horror villains, for the reasons I outline in the latter third of the video. In this video, I want to go over movie villains that the right should embrace as morally in the right, in spite of their movie's framing. I want to talk about how holding conservative to reactionary hierarchical morals in spite of insufferable protagonists is a great thing. I will eventually make a video or two on traditionalist films that are explicitly conservative, like Zulu or Master and Commander, but that is for another day. Let's start this video with two analyses of the Star Wars saga from Richard Spencer and Morgoth's review. Bear with me, consuming and judging consumers is mentally draining work, but someone has to do it. It doesn't take a particularly insightful analysis of Star Wars to realize that the Empire and Sith were actually the good guys. In their review of the Star Wars saga, Richard Spencer and Mark Brahman discussed the pervasive flaws of the Jedi and of the Republic, with Spencer attempting to conduct a Straussian analysis and Brahman attempting to do an identitarian analysis. The view both men take is that the, quote, essence of the light side is detachment, sexlessness, and removing oneself from one's family, unquote. They reiterate that the, quote, light side almost always ends in suicide, unquote. Meanwhile, quote, passion and attachment is the essence of the dark side, unquote. They ultimately conclude that the morally correct pro-natalist side of the Force is the dark side, and they say that, quote, at some point we all realized that Darth Vader was right, unquote. I'm getting ahead of myself though. Spencer and Brahman's review of Star Wars started with their analysis of the original trilogy. Brahman suggests that there's something very Aryan about the blonde-haired, young, romantic, celestial god named Skywalker. This most likely flew under George Lucas's radar. However, they say that the correct position to take in the galactic civil war is on the side of the Empire. They claim that the rebels can never truly rule the galaxy. The Empire is a monolithic force of order, while the rebels are a force of pluralistic chaos. As shown at the end of Episode 6, the Ewoks, a primitive race of teddy bears, stands in the wreckage of civilization. Again and again, the rebels are shown as scattered insurgents fighting against order. As an embodiment of the old Jedi Order and following Joseph Campbell's monomyth, Obi-Wan sacrifices himself like a true Jedi rather than attempting to live on and raise more Jedi. The reviewers lament that Star Wars co-creator Lawrence Kasdan should have had his way narratively with the Star Wars trilogy, rather than letting George Lucas allow the traditional good guys to topple the evil Empire of Order. Kasdan wanted to change the ending of Episode 6. At the end of Episode 6, Darth Vader sacrificed himself to save his son. Vader is a Sith. He cares about his family and his legacy. He wanted to topple the Emperor and rule side by side with his son, just as he wanted to rule side by side with his wife Padme in Episode 3. It was Luke that ran from his family and abandoned him, in favor of higher loyalties than family. Vader sacrificed himself to save Luke. Kasdan postulated that this act of passion and attachment would convince Luke to join the dark side. As Vader died, Kasdan wanted Luke to put on his father's mask, take over his father's mantle, rule the Empire, smash the rebellion, and bring order to the galaxy. That would bring about an end to the rise and fall of the great galactic empire. That is the Spinglerian cyclical nature of all civilizations. The Jedi are symbols of decadent termites eating away at the civilization of the Empire. Unfortunately, Lucas wanted his trilogy to have a happy ending rather than accept that Darth Vader might have had a point. In the prequels, we were introduced to the Republic. It is a decadent, corrupt, and bureaucratic mess. The Jedi have been reduced to nothing more than, quote, errand boys for this decadent, lifeless Republic, unquote. The Republic was a bureaucratic, boring mess where nothing got done and no one was happy. Not even the audience watching the prequels enjoyed in watching space politics. Richard Spencer likens being a Jedi to being a bureaucrat or a journalist of the New World Order, a, quote, guardian of decay, unquote. At the end of episode 3, even Mace Windu realized that the Republic was beyond saving and tried to overthrow the democratically elected government. The Republic was a bloated mess that couldn't handle a simple trade dispute without erupting into a civil war. Eventually, Anakin could not handle the contradictions of the Republic, or the rootlessness of the pathetic Jedi, and sacrificed himself to become something higher, to see a vision beyond the bloated pragmatism of the status quo. He puts on the mask and transcends into a higher plane of meaning while sacrificing his body, wife, and friends. Regardless of the personal cost, Vader and Palpatine brought peace and order to their new empire. Spencer and Brahman lastly went over the sequel trilogy. The reviewers do not really touch on the plot of the sequels too much, but instead hone in on the symbology. They noted that Rey is a solar Aryan name, but Rey means king in Spanish. Just as Wonder Woman's name is Diana Prince, Rey has a masculine name, denoting her status as the embodiment of a masculine archetype. Rey is a celibate wanderer who does not rule and does not produce a family. In other words, a proper Jedi. They hone in on the shallowness of the sequels trilogy, but picked up on some key anti-West symbolism. They likened Kylo's crossbar sword to that of a cross, and remarked on the significance of many Force Awakens trailers showing Kylo's cross lightsaber being upside down. Similarly, Luke's old lightsaber has been perverted. The lightsaber was originally blue and passed down from father to son, denoting the blue-blooded patrilineal line of nobility. It was given to Rey in the sequels, a nobody who seemingly has no blue Skywalker blood in her. In this new trilogy, anyone could be a Jedi, even those descended from the evil Sith. There's nothing truly special about the Skywalker line. They then recalled how Luke in the sequels is the perfect embodiment of the Jedi ethos. Luke is disconnected from his family, from the Force, from his hobbies, from his own passions, and when he does fight, he can only fight as a limp hologram. Spencer and Brahman's review is mostly impromptu, but their analysis of the dyad Jedi-Sith division is incredibly insightful. Ultimately, you should hope that you are not ruled by the detached, suicidal, sexless Jedi. Instead, hope that your nation should be ruled by romantic, orderly Sith. Morgoth's review also had a fascinating review of Star Wars. However, he looked at the plot of Star Wars from the perspective of Oswald Spengler and Joseph Campbell. Spengler's magnum opus, The Decline of the West, attempts to frame the rise and fall of civilizations as predictable cycles. Joseph Campbell's book, Hero of a Thousand Faces, attempts to explain the hero's journey, the storytelling formula that is used in most heroic adventure narratives. Morgoth tries to explain the plot of the Star Wars saga and the decline of the Republic in the framing of the Spenglerian civilizational decline. When a civilization is young, it is vigorous. During the springtime of a civilization finds its soul by building great cathedrals. In Star Wars, that is the Great Jedi Temple. However, Spengler claims that changes start occurring when a megalopolis city expands and eventually dictates to the hinterlands. The expanding city breeds materialism, science, and rationalism. Out of the city comes abstract ideas like democracy and rights. You will never once hear the word democracy in the original Star Wars trilogy, but it is something of a buzzword in the prequels. This model of a megalopolis city civilization coming into decline closely resembles Spengler's model. The prequels mostly take place on the city planet of Coruscant. The politics of the prequels is irrational and scientific. To the horror of Star Wars fans, Qui-Gon Jinn talks about midichlorians, quantifying religion into a science, and using a gadget to quantify the previously spiritual force. In Spengler's model, a civilization in decline brings about an enlightenment, where the founding myths of the civilization are rationalized and undermined. Morgoth says that once a civilization is strong, wealthy, and comfortable with itself, it questions itself, which undermines the original narratives the civilization was based on. He says that Qui-Gon deconstructs our understanding of the religion of the Force and makes skeptics out of us when he whips out his midichlorian gadget. Instead of a Spartan-esque civilization based on moral absolutes, you have a civilization of moral gray, a civilization of science, money, and democratic squabbling. You have massive rational battles over trade rights, embargoes, and economic blocks. You have a clone army and an army of droids, of robots. These armies are grown in vats and manufactured in factories. They are not organic. Materialism and order, standardized armies, and a galactic technocracy eventually bring peace to an unhinged republic. This is the rise of Caesarism. Anakin Skywalker becomes a skeptic. He uses materialism and order to bring an end to the symptoms of a galactic civilization in decline. Morgoth is much more generous to the original trilogy than Spencer. He explains that Luke is the romantic Joseph Campbell hero tackling the evil, corrupt Caesar. At the end of the original trilogy, truth, beauty, and goodness win out in the end. Luke is called onto adventure from a space wizard mentor. He faces threshold guardians. He loses his mentor. He grieves, he transforms into a spiritual warrior, he defeats evil, and he is awarded. Whatever, it's a great traditional story, but in the great scheme of Spenglerian civilization in decline, the rebels are the barbarians at the gates of Rome. Morgoth does not make this analogy, but I feel like it improves the thesis of his video. The rebels are the weak barbarians feasting on the remnants of the legacy of the glorious Roman Empire in decline. Luke is the Romanized Visigothic King Alaric, sacking Rome and forcing the Roman Emperor Honorius to his knees. Just as Alaric sacked Rome and then migrated to set up a petty kingdom in Spain, the rebels founded the New Republic. Morgoth uses the Spenglerian term Cult of the Dead to classify the heirs of Palpatine's empire. The morally broke New Republic LARPed as the old, decadent Republic, but was quickly smashed by the upstart First Order. Morgoth then begins to do a meta-analysis of the sequel trilogy, conflating the inability of Disney's movie studio to create new narratives with the inability of the New Republic and Resistance to create new heroes. The original energy of the franchise and of the political entity of the Republic has been crushed by rationalism and technocracy. The franchise tried to resurrect the dead archetypical heroes, but these heroes were not meant for this new world. The civilization is dead. Morgoth asserts that nobody can create new narratives in the postmodern deconstructivist world of Hollywood and in the Star Wars universe. In Spengler's model, the Star Wars galaxy is a dead civilization where nothing new can come into being. One can only resurrect old heroes and then deconstruct and cannibalize them. This is the result of rationalism. Rey is a sexless, rootless dud, LARPing as an old hero, only to disappear into the same desert where the original trilogy began. Nothing new was born, and nothing new can ever be born after the sequel trilogy. To summarize Morgoth's Spenglerian analysis, the spark of creativity sets civilization or the movie franchise into motion. Something magical, energetic, and world-changing happens. It reaches a flabby middle age of enlightenment, modernism, cynicism, and skepticism, and it eventually runs into the postmodern train wreck stage. Should right-wingers support Darth Vader, Emperor Palpatine, and the Empire? From the point of view of the citizens of the Star Wars galaxy, yes. The Republic was a decadent disaster. The New Republic and Resistance are barbarians squatting in the smoldering pile of ashes that used to be a great civilization, and the First Order was the whiny, inorganic bastard child of the once glorious empire. It is better to operate under an orderly empire than sulk in the corruption of the New Republic or Old Republic. Before it was expelled from canon lore, the expanded universe showed off the relative stability of the Imperial remnants. Following the death of the Emperor, Admiral Thrawn and the Moffs led a region of relative order compared to the New Republic. It was better to live in the Eastern Roman Empire than the fallen Western Roman Empire. The best the Star Wars universe could hope for is the rise of another civilization over the next couple hundred centuries, because the ending of the sequels showed a totally disinterested and potentially even more disorganized formation of an even newer republic. It would probably take a less powerful organization than even the First Order to topple whatever pathetic structure comes to fruition after Episode 9. Christianity and the fanatical Catholic Church arose out of the ashes of the Roman Empire to somewhat unify Europe. Something always rises out of the ashes, but in the meantime, the late Republic, rebellion, and New Republic are regimes of disorder, bureaucracy, corruption, and chaos that quickly dissolve into war. This makes the Empire the only structure of order capable of containing the entropic forces of a civilization in decline. God help the galaxy after it is purged into centuries of government breakdown after Episode 9. Alright, so I've talked about Star Wars enough. There are a couple other movie villains that attempt to fight off the moral degeneration of the protagonist's sinister plots. Each of these villains needs a video with their own analysis, but I'm going to give a brief summary and explanation for the reason why they deserve some respect. Ras al Ghul and Bane from Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. Ras al Ghul is the leader of the League of Shadows, a shadowy organization of ninjas that cut down a civilization that becomes too decadent in order to prevent centuries of decay. He is an accelerationist. He sees Spengler's model of centuries of decay and says, better make the centuries of decline quicker and less agonizing. Gotham is decadent, horrifyingly corrupt, and lawless. In Ras al Ghul's eyes, Gotham cannot be reformed and should therefore be culled before things get even worse, so that a new civilization can rise from the ashes. In Batman Begins, Jim Gordon says, we start carrying semi-automatics, they buy automatics. We start wearing Kevlar, they start buying armor-piercing rounds. When Batman eliminates the organized mob, the mob become desperate and bring in the Joker. Lawless order transcends into lawless nihilistic anarchy. Joker was ahead of the curve. People were going to eat themselves in a class war in the very next movie. Ras al Ghul's solution was to keep civilization small enough so that it is not capable of producing, say, Joker times 10. Nurse Ratchet from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Nurse Ratchet is a passive-aggressive Karen caretaker of a mental hospital. Our protagonist is the statutory rapist, gambler, and batterer Randall McMurphy, or Mac. Mac's desire is to bring anarchy into the tranquil mental hospital. Mac is the embodiment of the boomers trying to liberate themselves from the tyranny of order and social norms, and to prove that there is more to life than simplicity. While Mac tries to inject fun into the monotony of routine, he also causes chaos and makes life worse for everyone in the long run. Mac breaks the mental patients out of the mental hospital, only to steal a boat and go fishing. Mac also sneaks alcohol and prostitutes into the mental hospital. Nothing is more wholesome or meaningful than getting drunk and having promiscuous sex with prostitutes, right? Well, Nurse Ratchet was right to lobotomize Mac. Bill the Butcher did nothing wrong in the movie Gangs of New York. Blackpilled made a great video about the gangs of New York and its role in propagandizing the phony American melting pot narrative. But here is my take. Bill's father died in the War of 1812. He personally has direct familiar links to the founding of America. His main concern is that immigrants are invaders and will never appreciate or feel attached to the land of his forefathers. He leads the Protestant nativists against the Catholic newcomers in visceral gang warfare and, debatably, in democratic politics. Was he right that one needs to be genetically linked to America's founding stock to fully appreciate the morals, jobs, and land of the nation? Yeah, I'm sure the refugee crisis totally didn't result in the demographic replacement of native Europeans and contribute to a significant uptick in crime. I'm sure that the reconquest of the American West by illegal and legal Hispanic immigrants is totally not a thing. I'm sure that no one, absolutely no one, is profiting off of the cheap labor of poor immigrants. Damn, I'm running out of steam. Alright, so here are a couple villains that one should support ironically. Captain Bligh from Mutiny on the Bounty. To quote the good captain, cruelty with a purpose is not cruelty, it is efficiency. Grindelwald and Lord Voldemort from Fantastic Beasts and Harry Potter. If we would have listened to Grindelwald, the Holocaust would have never happened. Dolores Umbridge, also from Harry Potter. The little brats at Hogwarts deserved what they got. The Sheriff of Nottingham from Robin Hood, King of Thieves. Robin Hood was a thug, and his merry gang needs to get spooned. King Edward the Longshanks from Braveheart. The Scots deserved what they got. Snidely Whiplash from Dudley Do-Right. The Canadians deserved what they got. The Principal from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Ferris Bueller was a punk and deserves to be in detention or expelled. Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. The Beast was a monster and deserved what he got for stealing the town's women. Cruella de Vil from 101 Dalmatians. Animals don't have rights, respect human supremacy. The Elusive Man from the Mass Effect games. Respect human supremacy. Negan from The Walking Dead TV show. Tyrannical order is necessary in a post-civilization zombie apocalypse scenario. I think these meme villains are getting a little too ironic. Those last two weren't even from movies. Adam the Vampire from Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter. Lincoln was the first American tyrant and he deserved what he got. Dr. Evil from Austin Powers. Austin Powers was a communist degenerate and he deserved to die. Pennywise from It Chapter 2. Hate crimes aren't real crimes. Hans Landa from Inglourious Bastards. Well, okay. Maybe I shouldn't go there. Alright, maybe I crossed a line. Oops. Anyway, disregard those last couple villains. Be sure to like and subscribe to my channel, it really helps me with the algorithm. Thank you.